Hi folks, welcome to my 8-Bit Retro Journal. Today I'm going to be focusing on the Amiga, which is a platform that I'm eager to actually own one. I just put on a bid on the UK version of eBay on an Amiga 600, which is a PAL version. I've been wanting to get an Amiga 600 NTSC, but those things are as impossible to find as unicorns, I guess. And so I found a nice one on the UK site that's in working condition. It's probably going to be very competitive, so I won't get it, but at least I'm starting the process. So still I'm sort of forced to use emulators. What I want to do today, so there's actually a QL emulator that will run on the Amiga called QDOS Classic. And there's actually a version that's been hacked to replace the Kickstart ROM to be able to, and so you basically replace the Kickstart ROM with this ROM that's hacked to run the QDOS, which is a QL operating system, and then emulate the QL. And so that's what I'll be doing today. Now it's interesting because for my April 1st video, it was April 2nd for some of you, I actually did played a prank on people in April Fool's video where I suggested that there was a ROM cartridge that you could plug in the back of the QL, and it was a hack on the Kickstart ROM, and it would actually run Amiga the Amiga Kickstart and Workbench natively on the QL, and I had a few people sort of convinced until the end, and most people liked it. There were a few people that were upset at it, and I apologize. I tend not to do those kind of videos often. But so I have to stick with emulators. Now actually I'm a big fan of emulators because you can see the ZXSimulator is a ZX81 ROM emulator that I wrote during the pandemic. And I actually did a video a few months back where I ran that on an old QL emulator, QLA, which was running on a DOS box, which was running in a browser. So it was an emulator and emulator and emulator in a browser. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get to run the ZXSimulator on the QDOS Classic QL emulator on WinUAE, the Amiga emulator under Windows. So it's another Inception. I mean, hopefully I'll be able to run this on a real computer when I own one. But for now, I wanted to at least give that a try. And it was actually fun. I learned a lot. I learned a little bit about, there's a program on the Amiga called XFS, which lets you read different file disk types. And so I got that working installed. And I'll show you how to do that because it wasn't easy. So I'm learning a bit more about the Amiga, so that's good. I know in the past I've kind of spent a lot of time comparing the Amiga to the QL in terms of operating systems, and I like the QL very much. But I also like the Amiga. There are lots of things on the Amiga that I really have enjoyed working with. And also it's the month of May, and so a bunch of YouTubers are celebrating the Amiga with hashtag Amiga. I'll put it in the video. And there's also a website which you can find in the description. It doesn't give you much information, but basically all you have to do to find other videos is just click on the hashtag Amiga and you'll see other YouTubers doing it. So that's what I'm going to do today, emulation nested in emulation. I think it's going to be interesting, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's get to it. So this is the WinUAE emulator, and this is the latest version. I downloaded it like sometime late summer of last year, and I just checked, and it's 4.4. And I actually tried to get the emulator to run on this, and I was not able to do it. And in fact, there is, let me do that. So this is the emulator that I'm running, QDOS Classic for Amiga. There's also QDOS for Amiga, which is an earlier version. In fact, you can see Mark Swift worked on both of these. And so this is a continuation, I think, or it's a derivative. The reason I use this is because I could actually get this to run for UAE, because there's actually a QL kick ROM for UAE, and it says that you don't need to actually have an Amiga ROM to run it, although I have plenty of Amiga ROMs. And so it gives you the kick ROM, and then it also gives you two ADF disks, one that's empty and one that's not. I use the empty one to upload some of my own software, and that work I actually did on this machine here. So I tried to get the UAE version of QDOS running on this. I was unable to do it. What basically happens is this will cycle through the colors that you'll see when I do it on an older version, and then it just gets stuck. So so I ended up finding a website. Do I still have it? It was the source. Let me do it this way. SourceForge old WinUAE versions, and probably I think this is the one that's going to come up. Yeah, you can go back to the original site here. So this is where you can find them all the way from the latest to the earliest. And so I went all the way to this version right here is the one after this 242526 will not run the QDOS Classic, but 023 will. So that's the one I'll be running. So it's a, this is, we're talking, the emulator was actually written around 2002, so it kind of matches up with when this version was written, which was where is it right here? Yeah, around 2003. But something diverges after this, and I couldn't figure out how to run it. So yeah. So, but one of the first things I had to do is I wanted to. I mean, I got it to work, and I had to sort of tweak it. So the nice thing about the modern Amiga emulator is that it'll just give you this picture. And you have to do very little. It certainly has a lot of setup options. If you go on here, you can see it just has a ton of these, and most of these I don't even know what they are. But one thing you don't have to deal with is the filter. I mean, the display you can just kind of set up, and I think by default it was 512. I think this was half this number, so I just doubled that. But these filters you can just kind of leave be. I've never messed with them. But it turns out on the other one, I had to really work at it. And let me demonstrate that to you before I move on. So if I go to, actually, I should just do there. So this is the 823, and if I start this one up, it gives you a different menu, and I have two configurations. If I do the Amiga configuration and load it, and then say OK, so this will load a very similar, and I think as far as I can gather, that the UAE is older than WinUAE, obviously. So this is just an early version of WinUAE. It also seems like the color is slightly different between the older version. So they fixed maybe the color matching for what the also the difference here is, notice that this does not pick up the mouse, whereas this does. Interesting. But yeah, so it's running. It's running actually the same operating system. I think it's running at the, well, the speed is the one thing I'm also not able to control. So if I go to the options here, you'll see that this, if I reset this, that's what the picture looks like. And I really had to work at getting this to work and having it look good. And so, whereas the modern one just gives it to you as is. Let me show one other thing, which is, yeah, so let me load the QL configuration. And so if I look at the CPU, I actually have this as max 500 speed 6000, but I've also had it at 68 or 40 and adjustable between CPU, and had these in the middle, and just played around with them, and it runs the same speed. So it's just kind of strange. But let me boot up the let me first show you what I had to do for the old emulator. Under configuration, you have this Kickstart ROM, and that's all you had to. You grab that from this website. Dilwyn is a QLer that has just created a phenomenal website. It has a lot of software free, and he only publishes freely available software that has been released by authors. There's no pirated stuff on here, but he has a terrific site. I mean, this is the entire emulation site. I'm even mentioned here briefly somewhere. No, actually, I'm not mentioned here. I'm mentioned somewhere here. Is it here? ZXSimulator. A user, a QL forum, has created a ZX emulation for the QL DOS box. I have more than this. I actually have the entire source that runs on the QL, so I should actually give that to him as well. But I was really happy when I saw that. But if you go to emulators, you see that all these emulators are out there. They have them for Atari too, but for the QL, they have these two. And so I just downloaded this, and then they also created these, if you open these up, these are two ADF files. So one has utility software you need, and then to actually boot it, and then one is a blank disk. So those are the only two things you need, and then basically so the floppy I have, that's the ADF0, and then I ended up putting ADF1 on here, which I filled with stuff using the modern emulator. I created a hard disk as well, which is not showing at the moment, but if I, right, this is because I don't have the, if I built the Amiga emulator, I have the hard disk as well, similar to, so the interface is different, but it kind of does the same thing. But I don't know if it's as robust as 4.4, but yeah, so you need the Kickstart ROM, which you can set, where do you set it? Right here, under ROM files, you pick it. And then the floppy, and I have, again, mine and the one that comes with it. And then all you have to do is just, and of course the filter itself was different, I think, from what it was for the Amiga. But then you just boot it up, and it'll tell you that the checksum is wrong, and then it'll just, yeah, it gives you the, all right, I also set the screen size for the display to be more QL friendly. So it's 512 by 256, and I just doubled it to 1020 by 512. I don't know what this would actually look like on the QL. Anyway, it's booting up. And while it is, I can go back to this one. So the one thing is, by the way, the QDOS has two resolutions. It has a high resolution. It has low resolution with 8 colors and high resolution with 4 colors. It does the 4-color one perfectly, but for some reason it's struggling with some of the 8-color ones, because you saw what it looks like. It has that weird, it's not giving you clear full colors. Although this works, and I assume this is not in high res. This lets you set the time, I guess, which I'm not going to do. This is not part of the QL. This is just some program somebody loaded. But so if you do mode 8, you get that. And let me show you what a real QL. So this is a QL emulator, QLA. And if I go in here and I type mode 8, that's what it should look like. And so it's not doing a good job in mode 8, but if you do mode 4, which is less colors, higher resolution, they kind of match up. Yeah, so now it is. So yeah, and I don't know if that has to do with the fact that it's the emulator. If it does it on a real Amiga, I don't know. All right, so yeah, so it just kind of shows you that, yeah, it does a pretty good job. But I also know that I don't think this is running at Amiga 500 speed. Because when I run my ZXSimulator, this runs about 4 times faster than an actual QL. And I just don't think an Amiga, which has twice the clock speed, well, it has the same clock speed, but because it has a 16-bit versus an 8-bit data bus, it's probably running twice as fast as a QL, that it could actually then run a QL natively, a QL emulated 4 times as fast. So there's something going on. Like I said, it would have been better could I run it on the latest WinUAE. But anyway, so I'll close this up so that it's not too confusing, but just to show you that, yeah, it's doing a pretty good job here. Anyway, this is the QDOS Classic running on an old version of WinUAE. In order to actually get this to work, I had to install XFS. And so I kind of followed the instructions, and I got XFS, which was an LHA file that just had this directory in it, and I just created the info and had it show, and then it has all this stuff in there. It has a guide. The guide just wouldn't read. It gives me this error, but I could read it just in Windows, just because of the text file. But what the installation instructions say to do, and this is where this one web page comes in handy, was to, I found it here, just had to copy XFSD. There's the guide kind of tells you this as well. So if you go to the guide here, it tells you what to copy, but this part was confusing. So even though the guide tells you all these things, and if you look at these in text, it tells you to copy and then do the, I don't think I did all 3 of these. And then once you do that, all you have to do is do the mount. So that's what I did, is I actually exposed the, I didn't have the, so when they said copy to the L, I'm like, I don't have that. What I did, I just had to create an info file for it. So I stuck that in here. you'll see that devs has both mount S and FD in here. So you copy those things in, and again, they're in their respective. So there's an L directory that has, I guess it must have moved then instead of copied. And then there is a devs directory where it had those other two things that I moved out of that. But the guide tells you this. So if if you open this up, it'll tell you how to install it. Then you open the shell up. Well, first I need to actually add the disk. So let me do that. And the disk is going to be df well, and open that. And I think I already have it where it's going to mount both. So, but what you get the first time is you're going to get so it's already done that. But what I would get first is I wouldn't get this. I would just get df-bad, and then once I type in that command, mount fd0 from devs mount list xfs, hit return fd0. And I already copied stuff into that. So I created a directory cd wb 1.3 ql that I copied all the files that I wanted to copy in, and then copied them over. Now there is sort of a chicken and the egg problem that I had to deal with, which is the QL executables are simple text ASCII text files with one slight variation in that they have a byte or a word header that tells it how much data space it needs. So it's a number that needs to be part of that. If it's not there, and there might be other flags set into the first sector when you're reading it in. And so that actually needs to be kept. And when you just drag it file onto a Windows machine, you lose that. And so you need to then basically compress all archives, all executables into an archive and then uncompress it. But of course, you also need to have the uncompressed program. So that's a chicken and the egg problem. So what they did on the QL is they have this cool little program. It's job to base. And what it does is a basic program on the QL that allows you to emulators. If I go back here, it's in, I believe it's in 7. There's a job to base right there. And it's a basic program. So Unix uses, QDOS uses Unix style files. So so it's just a basic program. And what it does is it takes an executable so you run this on your QL, it takes an executable, and what it does is it converts it. And it converts it to another basic program. And that basic program looks something like this. If I go into my hard disk here under QL. So I created this archive program. So this is my compression and decompression archiver. And this is actually a basic program here. And this basic program simply has this very short little program and then this long data file, which is basically the binary representation of the program, and it'll recreate it and then stick in the proper header information so you can regenerate it. You can do this for any size, but I did it for an archive program because it's pretty small. It's like 4K in size. And then I compressed my my ZXSimulator is actually an archive of that. So I have to first decompress that, and then first generate the archive executable, and then decompress that. And then I can get this to work. So it's a little bit of rigmarole, but us QLs have sort of figured out how to do this. And so on the QL side now, let me close that. In this emulator, you'll see that what I have is FLP2 is my second disk. So I have my arc-bas, and then the rest of these are just text files. I also have this toolkit 2, which allows me. This is another basic program that'll load this. This gives me a little bit more functionality like jobs. I don't know if I have jobs or not. But so let me do that. So I'm going to load the FLP2 arc-bas. So that's just a basic program. And then once it's loaded, I'm going to run it and generate my unarchiver, basically, which is, again, this is a little 4K program. And the disk IO, so this is here now. I've got my little program. This is the one I showed. And now if I run it, it's going to generate the archive program for me. Now, part of the QDOS Classic emulator, it gives you a RAM disk, which there's lots of RAM disk software on the QL. They have even dynamic RAM disks, which I really like, which means they don't take up any memory until you put stuff into them. So here I'm going to write into RAM1 ARC-EXE. It's going to go pretty instantly. So my RAM disk is actually the size of a microdrive, 128. Actually, it's half the size, so it's 64K. So it's pretty small. And so now I can run that executable from my RAM disk, ARC-EXE. And so now I finally have an executable that I can run. So I wouldn't otherwise have gotten that. This is a German program, so it just tells you it does Huffman encoding. So it does uncompressed Huffman bytes, and then you can either compress or that's gross and gross-Klein, and then so I'm going to go gross to uncompress, and then begin is the first one, and it wants to know what program I want. Well, and this is the multitasking part of QL, right? I want the program I want is called ZXArc, so FOP2 ZXArc. And you might, as Amiga folks complain, going, wow, that's pretty archaic, but I will say, and then destination device, which is my RAM1. I will say, and then yes, no, all, or quit, and I'm going to say yes. I will say that also working with the Amiga, at least Workbench 1.3, it also has its limitations. Like for instance, I don't like that I haven't figured out a way to do cd ... to go up a directory. You always have to type the whole path name. I haven't figured out how to do wildcarding yet with copies. Now the QL, the base one doesn't have it, but if I run Toolkit 2, it gives you some of those things. So each OS has its idiosyncrasies. Again, while this is running, we can take a look at RAM1 and 51. So it has to get, you can see that it says 51 of 128 sectors. Each sector is 512, half a K basically. So if I keep looking at this, it's almost there. I think it's about, yeah, so it just finished. There it is. So now I can run, so again, if I were to run, if I wanted to run my, so, whoops, this is the first one. So this is the floppy FLP1, dir FLP2. If I were to had copied CX on here and tried to run it, what it would have said is, so if I do exec FLP2, even though it's an archive version, it would just have said bad parameter. So, but now I can go RAM1 ZX, and it runs. There it is, my ZXSimulator. Emulator running an emulator running an emulator. So again, as I said, this is going to run fast. FOP2, and what I want to do is, I still have the compression program running. FOP2. Yeah, so I have all these. So I'm going to run the banner program, right? So underscore banner bass, and this should go pretty quickly. And run it. 3. And yeah, this runs a whole lot faster than, so if I run, I still have my QL running. So if I run these at the same time, let me restart this. Run. And if I say 3 on both and hit return. Yeah, it just finished the top line. So this would suggest it's running 4 times faster. I don't think that's true. But yeah, it's kind of cool to see your emulator running on someone else's emulator, right? That's kind of neat. So I can also load my, so this is my still incomplete FOP2 Elite basic program. So they remapped the things using UK style keyboards. They remapped the quote to the @2 key. So I keep screwing that up. So run. So this definitely runs faster. So I can configure the keys: fire, left, right, up, down. And here's my program: fire. Let's kill a pirate. But again, it's running. I've run this on an actual ZX81. It runs slow, but it runs. I run this on a bunch of emulators, and boom, boom, boom. There we go. Destroyed it. Haha. All right, so that works. What else do we have? We have dir FOP2. the mine program, I guess we could give it a try. So load FOP2 mines QL bass. So, I mean, certainly my program is running well. I mean, this is not really testing out the QDOS Classic emulator, other than that it's able to run my program. But this is a Minesweeper program, so it's going to take a bit to, but we can sort of poke around while it's doing that. First of all, I can quit that top program finally. So now I only have 2 running. FOP2. Oh, I have the baton controller. I can run, so I can run that under Q. I'll run FOP2 baton bass. So this is a program that is going to just. I have the non-basic version, but yeah. So this will say. So this will run and generate the baton. While it's doing that, of course, it's going to re-clear the screen once I hit 100% on the emulator, on the ZXSimulator. Again, obviously the QL does really badly with keeping, so it's really lazy. It doesn't try to keep each screen's information intact, so you get these screens overriding each other. They do have screens and windows, and I should say windows on the QL, but they just don't do a very good job keeping track of the information. So the Amiga does a really nice job on that. But as you'll see here in a second, now it's drawing the and you can see any those patterns you see. It just means that I probably haven't scaled the window properly yet, because it should be perfect. So here what I'm saying is that oops, these lines right here that you see, that means I just haven't scaled it properly. See if I can go back into, right, so now I can go down here and hit space. Oh, this is, oh, and I hit mine right away. Oh, that's bad luck. Oh, yeah, well, I'm not going to play that again. Quit. So what else do we have? So another cool program. So let me quit the ZXSimulator. So some programs can run machine code without being executables, and this one here is one of them. It's called I think mode 4 dir FOP1 2. Yeah, so it's the unfortunately I can't fix this because I don't know how to get the number key on this. I've been trying to find it, and I need the number key to access a channel. So this is a keyboard mapping issue, to access a channel to change the window stuff, and I haven't been able to figure it out. So I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I haven't figured it out. So because what I need to do is change the ink color. I say ink 7. Oh no, that fixed it. Okay, yeah. But I, luckily, because ink 3, but I can't resize the window because, well, I guess maybe I can. Window 512. I forget what. 40, 40, 40, 40. FOP2. Yeah, that's what I did. Window 100, 100 at 10, 100. dir FOP2. Yeah. Window 150, 150 at 100 at 200, 10. Oh, window. So you have 3 windows open. You could change that. So let me just see if I can't. Window singular. 200, 10. dir FOP1, 2. It's a little better. In any case, the last program I wanted to run was, wow, that's an awful color. Maybe I should make it green. Ink 4, I think. dir FOP2. Yeah, it's better. So Kugel demo, right? So if I run FOP2 Kugel demo bass. So this creates its own window. So this was a little demo that basically what it does is it just draws these circles, and then it uses a little machine code routine to basically create an animation by moving the top part one up and moving the bottom part to the bottom. So it sort of has created this seamless animation. You'll see that this is always a nice thing to run. Of course, you can see kind of here what's happening, because you shouldn't really be seeing these lines, these tearings, but you see it. So yeah, anyway, I think I'm going to end here. So that's the QL Classic emulator running on WinUAE. On an older version of WinUAE. As I said, I tried to get to run here, and I can show you what happens. Maybe we'll end this way. If I go and do that, and if somebody has an idea of what could be going on. Now, I went through this, so I have the QL configuration loaded in, and I went through this in as many detail as I could to find out all the different settings you have and try to set these up almost the same to what I had. But if I run this, what will happen is it will do red, blue, and then here's where it's supposed to boot up with the, and it just stays there forever. So, and it has the same kernel, the same ROM, and the same disk images as this one, but it just sticks. And up from version 1.5 onwards, between 0824 to 1.4, it just actually, I can't even get it run on Windows, so there's something going on there as well. But yeah, so the latest version does this, so I couldn't get it to run. But at least I could get this one to run, and it's pretty stable, and it does show it, you know, the power of the Amiga and being able to run that, so that's pretty cool. So anyway, I'm going to end here today. I hope you enjoyed this journey into the Amiga being able to run a QL. It seems to be pretty compatible. Like, I haven't, as I said, really run this with FOP1, 2. I haven't run this with everything, obviously, because it's a bit of a pain. But also to be able to learn how to use the Amiga better was a fun part of this in terms of getting the XFS to read file systems. A lot of this, if you haven't used Amiga like I haven't, it was kind of foreign to me in terms of how do you configure the OS. But the more I use the Amiga OS, the more I like its interface. It's pretty cool. So I will end there. Go watch some of the other Amiga videos that are out there, and I'll have more coming up. I actually am going to do one more where I'm going to compare the QL's operating system again to the Amigas, and my friend Dave from Dr. Dave's Diversion is going to help me in using a real Amiga. So that's another comparison video that the QL again does something interesting, and so I wanted to demo that. I'll do that as well, but I also wanted to just showcase the Amiga because it's such a great machine. So anyway, thanks for watching me today, and I'll see you soon.